Good evening, everyone. It is called the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But to most people, the church's members are known simply as the polygamists of northern Arizona. Thousands of people in the town of Colorado City openly practice plural marriage. One man, multiple wives, and often dozens of children. And as Mike Watkus tells us, there are now growing concerns for those children in this polygamous town amid disturbing claims of child abuse and statutory rape. Mike?
Patty, in the state of Arizona, it is illegal to practice polygamy, but it's an ambiguous law that's almost never enforced, and perhaps that's as it should be. Most people don't want the government telling grown men and women what they can do in their bedrooms. But when underage girls are allegedly dragged into these polygamous unions, well, there are powerful concerns about child abuse, statutory rape, even mind control. Just the kind of concerns that are now rocking Colorado City, Arizona. Nestled in the red rocks of northern Arizona, the little town of Colorado City seems on its surface about as tranquil as any community in this country.
We're just like anybody else in America.
I've lived here all of my life, and I don't plan on going anywhere else.
Ladies, can I talk to you for a second?
No.
Publicity-shy women wearing ankle-length skirts, men in Levi's and boots, and children, lots of children, out at play on the town's mostly dirt streets.
My daughter could be being raped right now by a 39-year-old man.
But according to residents like Lenore Holm, behind the Norman Rockwell scenery and the small-town calm, there is a cancer at work in Colorado City, tearing apart both lives and families, a cancer in the form of what Lenore and other critics describe as a polygamous cult that Lenore says recently stole away her 16-year-old daughter, Nicole.
She's only 16 years old, and I've raised her so secluded from the outside world. She's never even had a boyfriend.
But now Lenore and her husband Milton say their teenage daughter has run away from their home to become, they fear, the second wife of one of the town's prominent polygamous men. A union that Lenore says was arranged and sanctioned by these men, the spiritual leaders of Colorado City. 90-year-old Rulon Jeffs, a man revered by his many followers as a living prophet of God, and Jeff's son Warren, the man who many now believe is the real power behind the aging prophet.
He has absolute control over these people. He really does. I think if you get the wrong man in power, you're in trouble.
And Lenore says her family's troubles now go well beyond just losing their daughter, because she says she and her husband and their 11 other children are now being evicted from their home in Colorado City, a place where almost all of the land is held in a trust and controlled by the religious hierarchy, meaning these men decide who can stay and who must go. And Lenore says the reason her family is now being booted out is because she refused to give her consent to having her underage daughter married off to a polygamous man, 23 years the child's senior.
It's definitely turned into a cult because of all the family destruction. Right now, they will lose their homes, their wives, their children, if they back his power at all.
You built this home, don't you?
Yeah. Well,
and they're now trying to throw you out of it.
yeah.
And all because of why?
As far as I understand, it's because my wife wouldn't give her legal consent for her 16-year-old daughter to marry a guy with a wife and 10 children.
I think women are being herded as cattle. Children, too.
Is there any truth to that?
Not a bit of truth to it.
Dan Barlow is the mayor of Colorado City, a practicing polygamist and one of the most prominent members of the town's fundamentalist faith. And in this rare interview, Barlow said Lenore's family is not being kicked out because of their daughter, but instead because Lenore and Milton Holm have turned their back on the church and become what's known as apostates.
Why are they being evicted?
Because that they've apostatized and left the church. And there's some other reasons that they have that are inappropriate, living on the trust land.
And this girl at the center of the story, Lenore's 16-year-old daughter, Nicole, we would have liked to have spoken to her and to the 39-year-old man that Lenore now claims her daughter is living with, a man by the name of Win Jessup. But when we went to Jessup's Colorado City home, two men claiming to be relatives blocked the driveway with a van and told us not to set foot on the property. Local police were then called, as they were when we recently went to the palatial home of the spiritual leaders Rulon and Warren Jeffs, a gated compound where both men are said to keep dozens of wives and small armies of children. They asked us to leave, and we did, leaving unanswered our questions about the possibility of child abuse, even statutory rape. And perhaps more important, what's become of Lenore's young daughter, Nicole, and what will become of Lenore's family after they're run out of town.
All I want is to not lose everything we have, including my family. And I just wish that these people would leave us alone.
But that's not likely. What's likely is there'll be lawsuits in this case. We can tell you that the church has issued written statements saying they discourage girls under the age of 18 from marrying, and also that Lenore's daughter has not been joined into a polygamous union, but Lenore doubts that, and tomorrow we'll tell you what steps she is taking to get her daughter back.
Can they legally run this family out of town?
A court has ruled that the church does indeed own the land, and so they can throw people out of their homes, even if those people have built those homes, invested a lifetime. A court has ruled that the church owns the land. They can't evict these people.
Okay, thanks very much, Mike. Good evening, everyone. It is believed there are tens of thousands of people who practice polygamy in the American Southwest, many of them right here in Arizona. They're usually very secretive communities, but as Mike Watkins tells us tonight, some disturbing controversies are exposing them to an unwelcome light. Mike?
Yeah, Patty, last night we introduced you to a northern Arizona woman who says her 16-year-old daughter has run away from home, and now the mom fears her child may have been pushed into a polygamous union with a 39-year-old man who already has a wife and 10 children. Well, tonight, the story of what that northern Arizona mother is doing to get her daughter back.
I just feel like it's wrong. It's just wrong for somebody to move in on a family and tear it apart.
Lenore Holm is a woman on the outs with both her church and her community. A church and community that are really one and the same in the little Arizona town of Colorado City, a place where most of the land is owned and some would argue most of the lives controlled by a fundamentalist sect best known for the practice of polygamy, a place where so-called righteous men are often rewarded with multiple wives who then bear dozens of children.
It's definitely turned into a cult because of all the family destruction that's gone on in the last 2 years.
And Lenore says she and her family are now being ostracized and evicted from their home on the church-owned land because she says she recently tried to stop her 16-year-old daughter, Nicole, from being pushed into a polygamous marriage with a 39-year-old man who already had a wife and 10 children. A union that Lenore says was ordered by the town's religious leaders. A 90-year-old man revered as a living prophet of God named Rulon Jeffs, and Jeff's son and right-hand man, Warren.
He has absolute control over these people. He really does.
Lenore says despite her efforts to stop her daughter, the child has now run away from home. A home that Lenore says she and her husband and 11 other children are now being thrown out of because she dared question the authority of religious leader Warren Jeffs.
He's destroying families, and he's making him more important than a child's own mother or a child's parents. He's saying, don't listen to your parents, listen to me.
You know, I've done nothing. I've done nothing but love my wife and children.
Former church member Jason Williams tells a similar story, saying last year his young family was ruined when the same religious leaders went to his 23-year-old wife, Suzanne, and told her that Jason was no longer a righteous man, and that she was to move in with another man and become that other man's second wife, taking Jason's 2 children with her.
It's pretty hard to take, because it tears you up inside, because this is your family.
But in a first-of-its-kind lawsuit, Jason Williams is now suing Colorado City's religious leaders for a whopping $10 million, alleging alienation of affection.
They don't handcuff them, bind them, gag them, that sort of thing, and stand them up there. It's a matter of saying you do this or else you lose your exaltation. It's just that simple. And
you go to hell.
That's right.
Ben Beislein is a longtime Colorado City dissident and the author of A History on Polygamy.
The biggest problem I see isn't polygamy. It's the control that the leaders have over the people here. They have total control. They own all the property, all the houses, and the people don't have their freedom.
Is this the Jeff's residence?
This is.
Is Mr. Jeff in?
Yes.
Can we?
He says no comment right now.
Our efforts to interview the religious leaders Rulon and Warren Jeffs have been consistently rejected. But to give you some sense just how powerful these men are, a short time ago they began encouraging their followers to start homeschooling their children or to send them to a church-run charter school. And when the town's public school opened for the fall semester a few weeks ago, more than 2/3 of the student body, some 650 kids, were suddenly pulled out of public education.
I think the invitation from the church to strengthen the home schools and the private schools had a very significant impact on it.
You're saying it was an invitation to do homeschooling.
Oh,
it's been characterized as sort of an edict.
Well, that's from the press.
If they can just keep the information going into their brains that they want going into their brains, then they can keep control.
But now some people fighting back against this alleged control. Jason Williams with his lawsuit, and Lenore Holm, who recently went to the local police department demanding that they find her missing daughter. Although, on her way out, Lenore expressed little confidence because she says most of the local police are members of the dominant fundamentalist faith.
They're just giving me the brush off. They're trying to communicate to me that I don't have the right to go in there and make a complaint about the fact that my daughter could be being raped right now by a 39-year-old man.
You come back to us live. The religious leaders don't like to appear on camera, but they do issue statements through their attorneys. They have called Jason Williams' lawsuit groundless and say that his wife left on her own accord. They have also issued a statement saying that Lenore's daughter is not in a polygamist union. But still the question remains, where is the child tonight? Lenore says her next stop will be in Kingman to talk to county officials, and if she gets no satisfaction, she's going to come down here and try to get state officials interested in this case. Patty, we will, of course, follow this story.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike. Good evening, everyone. For the last several weeks, we've been following the story of a northern Arizona woman who claims her teenage daughter has been lured away by what she calls a polygamous cult. This evening, Mike Watkins has the latest on a mother's desperate attempt to save her daughter. Mike?
Patty, to thousands of polygamists in the state of Arizona, the so-called principle of plural marriage, one man, many wives, is viewed as a divinely inspired religious right, a freedom. But a great many other people see it as merely an excuse to exploit women and children. And one of the most vocal critics is a woman named Lenore Holm. And tonight we update her struggle, her fight to keep her daughter from becoming a polygamist wife.
I can handle almost anything, but sexual abuse takes away a part of a person's soul.
37-year-old Lenore Holm is a woman at war, battling what she now calls a mind-controlling cult. The religious community that Lenore grew up in, the fundamentalists of Colorado City, Arizona, a secretive sect best known to the outside world for the practice of polygamy. A sect that Lenore now says lured away her 16-year-old daughter, Nicole, so the child could be given as a second wife to a 39-year-old polygamous man who already had a wife and 10 children.
They're like a trophy. And then once a man gets them and takes what he wants, then they're shoved under the rug. And the man is looking for another trophy. I am concerned about sexual abuse. I really am.
We first spoke to Lenore last month as she went to the Colorado City Police Department asking for help in finding her missing daughter and to determine whether the child had been secretly married to a 39-year-old polygamist by the name of Wynn Jessup. a union that Lenore claims was arranged by the town's powerful religious leader, a man by the name of Warren Jeffs. Yet on her way out of the police station, Lenore told us she had little faith in local cops, almost all of whom, she said, are practicing polygamists and devoted followers of the very religious leader she was complaining about.
They're trying to communicate to me that I don't have the right to go in there and make a complaint about the fact that my daughter could be being raped right now by a 39-year-old man.
We take all complaints seriously and we will investigate.
Although at the time these officers assured us they would investigate, but now more than a month later, Lenore's daughter is still missing, and Lenore says police haven't given her so much as a single phone call to update their so-called investigation.
So I could apply for a restraining order here. Okay.
So this week, Lenore took her complaints to Mojave County officials in Kingman, where County Attorney Bill Ekstrom told us he was deeply concerned by the allegations and by other recent developments in Colorado City, like the fact that some 700 fundamentalist children were recently pulled out of the public school system.
The issue that concerns me is this sudden change in direction, going back to being more secretive and less open. Whenever you're talking about harming children, there's an issue that I, as a prosecutor, have to be concerned about.
Where's the girl? It seems like everybody in town knows where this girl is. Why don't we just produce her? Let us see her. Let the mom see her. Let the mom take her to a doctor to see if she's had any kind of sexual relationships with anybody.
But for his part, Colorado City's polygamist mayor Dan Barlow yesterday seemed a lot more concerned with us asking questions than he was with the whereabouts of Lenore's daughter.
You're sworn law officers, and you're accountable to somebody, and you got a complaint in this town.
We're not accountable to you. Now get that straight.
Apparently also upset with our questions, Colorado City's polygamous police chief Sam Roundy, who says he personally conducted an investigation and found that Lenore's daughter is fine, and beyond that, it's none of our business.
She's not living with Wynn Jessup?
No, she is not living with Wynn Jessup.
And the religious leaders here haven't given her as the second wife to Wynn Jessup?
No, they have not.
You sure of that?
Yes, I am.
You're positive?
I investigated. I am positive.
So the case is over?
It is in my mind.
Of course, we also wanted to talk to Wynn Jessup, the man that Lenore claims has been chosen to marry her teenage daughter. But when we went to Jessup's business, he went into an office, turned off the lights, and shut the door.
Young girl here? I understand many of the law officers have young wives.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that. That's personal business, and you talk about your personal business.
I'm not married to teenage girls.
Neither am I.
Okay, are any of your officers?
No, they are not.
None of them. None of the law officers in this town are married.
Actually, I'll make no comment on that.
But one person who says she will continue to comment is Lenore Holm, although she is aware that with each passing day, it becomes less likely that she'll ever reclaim her daughter.
You ever going to get your daughter back?
I don't know.
Patty, we can tell you that at this point, we just don't know what the intervention of county officials will be on this case. As we have reported in the past, Lenore and her family are now being evicted from Colorado City, a home they built because the home is on church-owned land. This story has suddenly become an international incident because there's strong evidence that some of these girls are being transported over the Canadian border to a polygamous compound in Canada. The story far from over. We will continue to follow it.
But it seems like historically, law enforcement and politicians have been reluctant to get involved up there.
And they have, for a good reason, because it is blown up in their face when they've tried to break it up in the past, but they've attacked it because of the polygamy issue. Now they're looking at it because of the child abuse issues. This seems to have a lot more traction.
Terry, thank you. In Colorado City,
Mike? Yeah, Patty, Lenore Holm has always maintained that she and her family were being booted out of their Colorado City home because she'd stood up to polygamous leaders and said she didn't want her 16-year-old daughter placed in a polygamous marriage. Well, in the end, Lenore lost her daughter to polygamy, but now, thanks to a court ruling out of Kingman, Lenore and her family will not lose the rest of their worldly possessions.
I just feel like it's wrong. It's just wrong for somebody to move in on a family and tear it apart.
For more than 3 years now, northern Arizona resident Lenore Holm says she has lived in constant fear. Fear of losing her 6-bedroom Colorado City home, a house that her husband Milton built and where she, Milton, and 9 of their children have lived for years. The reason, according to Lenore, because in January of 2000, she told Colorado City's powerful polygamist leader, Warren Jeffs, that she would not give her permission to having her then 16-year-old daughter, Nicole, placed into a polygamous marriage to a 39-year-old man who already had 1 wife and 10 children.
5 minutes after I told Warren I would not give my legal consent for Nicole to marry a polygamist with 10 children and a wife, he called Milton and told him we couldn't live in our home anymore, basically.
And in the past, Colorado City's polygamist leaders have been able to wield the power of eviction over dissidents because those leaders control a trust that owns almost all of the town's land. But now, in what promises to be a precedent-setting case, Mojave County Judge James Chavez has issued a ruling after a 1-day trial last week that says polygamist leaders cannot throw Lenore and Milton Holm out of their house, a house that they built, unless the polygamist leaders give the Holms fair market compensation.
I talked to Mrs. Holmes. She was extremely happy. Of course, there's a lot of stress. You think you might be forced to move out of your house with no place to go in a very short period of time, and that obviously caused a lot of stress.
Phoenix lawyer George McKay represented Lenore and Milton in last week's trial.
Is this a big deal?
I think it's certainly a big victory to our clients, and I think it also has a significant effect in that area and the relationship between the church, the trust, and the people who live on it.
Mr. Parker, you can't touch the camera, please.
Don't touch the camera.
Please don't touch the camera.
And outside the courtroom last week, the reaction of some of the polygamists and their lawyers, men obviously uninterested in addressing the larger issue that polygamy is prohibited by Arizona's Constitution and that sex with underage girls is against the law.
We're in court trying to defend this religious organization that seems at its very core to run counter to this Arizona Constitution. Mr. Berry, come on.
We have the Constitution in Arizona that says there cannot be polygamous relationships. It says that young women under 18 cannot have sex with adults, and yet that's going on. It strikes me unusual that Arizona has done nothing about, or done very little about that.
And Patty, it strikes a lot of people as unusual that Arizona cops and prosecutors have not done more about this. They have indicted one man, but they can't even find him to bring him to trial at this point. Utah has been much more proactive, but this civil suit has some real teeth because there's a lot of dissidents up there that have this threat of eviction hanging over their heads, and this should prove to be a precedent-setting case. You can bet that the church will undoubtedly appeal this.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.